Welcome to another episode of Health Your Way podcast, where we discuss health issues ranging from physical, mental, emotional, as well as current facts.
Today we're talking pornography, protecting your family. And this topic means a lot to me because I feel like, a lot of us are not self-aware of what's going on. And my guest speaker today is Kerri. She's knowledgeable, experienced, and passionate educator. She's a returning guest, so I'm really appreciative that she took the time. Her three main focus are sexual abuse, prevention, special needs, education, LGBTQIQAP advocacy. Every time I say this, I'm going to be so happy because I got it right. Thank you, Kerri, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Yes, so I think the last time we had a conversation about sexual education, I think, again, it's the very taboo conversation, but a conversation that needs to be had. And today I really want to do pornography because I think a lot of us are self-aware of pornography, but not aware of how much of an impact it affects our family. And I think you're the right person to have this conversation with because of your knowledge. So I think the first thing, as a society, would you say we're overly exposed to pornography?
Absolutely, because it's just a click away. And particularly for our teenagers who are not paying for their own internet, it's super accessible. I think as a society, we're very desensitized to nudity, to aggression, to violence, because we see it in video games, on billboards, in magazines, in the media that we watch. And pornography is one of the most accessed, information on the internet.
I think I remember when I was young, internet was just starting. Okay, so it was starting, and it wasn't like, even if you saw it on TV, it was late night, like midnight when you were asleep, right? So I didn't say I did that, you guys. I'm just saying this is what was out there
With a very fuzzy screen.
Oh, you
Can't tell you how I know that, but hoping just for a little glimpse here and there.
Oh my God, you're taking me back. But to be serious, I think because you said so, like social media, like it's all accessible, not even on a laptop or a desktop where you used to be stationary. Like you could be again, on your phone, and you said your kids have internet, and it's very accessible. And I don't think a lot of people realize it. They just think it's just connection, but kids are not only doing connection; they're looking for things that are curious about.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's like, what would you say compared to when you were growing up as a child to your kids, or if you have any, what would you say the impact of pornography is compared to when you were younger to what they're experiencing now?
Well, there's no comparison. So I guess what I feel is that I had a childhood. I feel that my daughter had a childhood too, but the kids who are growing up now, I feel that pornography is robbing them of their childhood. When I was growing up, it was about accessing, maybe your mom or dad or brother had, a penthouse or a Playboy or a Playgirl underneath the mattress, or in the drawer that you could access. But those images were not of the degrading, dehumanizing, and objectifying nature that live pornography is. And we're seeing things that are more gory, more racist, more like objectifying than ever before. And kids are seeing that, and that becomes their norm. They think that this is what sex is supposed to be like, which for someone like me is horrifying that they think that.
Not even for someone like you. When you're telling me this, I don't think I'm aware of some pornography. Everybody's aware of pornography, but I don't think a lot of people are aware of some of the dangers of it. And listening to you talk, I didn't know it was that extent, or that broad. Because for me, when I think of pornography, I'm thinking of like physical, like nudity. But you're right, there's different plays to it. There's different concepts, and human beings have, some of us have warped mindsets, okay, and we want to see it. What would you say some of the misconceptions that parents have now that could be detrimental to their kids because they choose not to educate themselves on pornography?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the biggest argument that I hear from parents, and it's usually the dads, will say, well, I watched pornography, and some moms too. I watched pornography and I turned out fine. And what they're not understanding is we are comparing like a sunflower seed to a watermelon. Like there's no comparison. So what we saw as kids compared to what kids are seeing today, it's not comparable. And I'm not even actually sure that the parents that are saying that are actually aware of what kids are accessing. So I know recently Pornhub removed 10.5 million videos from their website because they were uploading images of child sexual abuse. Most people call that child pornography, but people in my position, like, no child is able to consent to pornography. So we want to call them what they are, child sex abuse images. You know, like, we're not even dealing with the same thing. And I don't want a parent to think, was like, I watched it, I'm fine. Because our kids are not fine. And we really know through evidence-based research that there are some significant long-term impacts for our kids watching pornography, particularly if they start younger viewing and watch for years before their first sexual experience.
Because they get, so I can understand why, because if you see something so often, it becomes like a norm for you. You think, okay, that's sex. You expect your partners to basically reflect what you're seeing. And I think that could be very dangerous for especially a woman, girls, because a lot of girls, I remember being that young, like, you're impressionable. You want people to like you. You know, you have self-esteem issues because you're going out of puberty and you compare yourself. And even men would be like, okay, that's expectations. They need to live up. There's different dynamics to it. I think as a parent that's listening or watching, what are one or two things they can do to educate themselves to realize that, you know, my understanding of pornography is different than what my kids may be seeing now?
Well, I think the easiest education would be for them to go online and look at RedTube or Pornhub or any of these websites and ask themselves, is this what I saw when I was growing up? You know, I think for our kids, our parents have to, number one, understand how to filter out this content. Like, this is the number one request I have of parents is, if you give your child a device at 6 years old, and they will be on it by themselves. So whether it's a video game or whether it's a cell phone to play a game on or whatever, they need to be educated about pornography if you're going to give them a device. So if you give them a device at 6, then you have to have that initial conversation. If you're on this device and you see naked people doing sexual things, you need to close the device and you need to come to me and we're going to talk about it, because kids are able to access pornography in many different ways, more ways than I could even tell you, because I'm not tech savvy as the young people, but they can access it through video games and things like that, access it when they're on like YouTube or Instagram or wherever, Twitter. I want parents to, number one, filter the content. And that means they have to investigate how to do that before they give a child a device, whether they use Circle Disney, whether they use the Gryphon. Protect Young Eyes has a new system out for protection for filtering. It's, if we give kids a device and just allow them to play on it, I kind of liken it to asking a 6-year-old child to navigate across an 8-lane highway by themselves.
It's not feasible.
And they are at risk for sexual exploitation.
I think for me as an adult, like, I'm on the internet. Once in a while you get that glimpse and you're like, what the hell? And you block or yeah. But it never occurred to me that, parents are giving their kids, 6-year-olds. Because I remember at 6, there was no such thing as a device. You had the playground, you had dolls, you had games, nothing else, right? And I think we're being innocent, or maybe, lack of better choice, ignorant. And when we're giving, I mean, I may not have a kid, but like, if I had a nephew, stuff, like, if I'm giving that, my expectation, I think in my head is like, oh, it's just a game. They're not going to be seeing that, but we can't control that. And then you're right. Like, just a small click or something pops up and you see an image. And as an adult, I see an image, I'm like, what the hell? But then imagine what a child is seeing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, we always have to remember, anywhere that a child is, so if there's a new game, Roblox or Minecraft or whatever they're playing, we know that there are inappropriate adults there waiting and wanting to groom children.
I think this is why one of the reasons why I fear having a child, because it's a different world, and I fear for my nephews and niece. Like I'm just like, okay, I wish you all the best of luck out there. But
But you can be the auntie, Mo, that educates them too, right? Like to talk, to have those tough conversations with them, because they need more than their grown-ups to talk to them about this. We are really moving into a time where we need to go back to the village raises the child, not the one parent or two parents or the grandparents raising the grandkids. We really need to do this together, because not everybody's tech savvy. So it might be saying to your neighbor, hey, I'll mow your lawn if you set up a filter on our home computers, because I know that you know how to do that, right? Like there's a give and a take. So, and if you can't afford to, or you don't know how to, then you need to request help from the village.
that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And I know you mentioned earlier about Pornhub, and we know that because of the whole child pornography, a lot of people are listening like, okay, you know what? How important is it? Like, I guess how easy, I guess my question is how easy it is for your kids to be exploited and be taken advantage? Because you said grooming, right? How easy is it for your children to be groomed?
Well, if I asked a typical grade 6 class, has anybody ever said anything to you sexually inappropriate online? Has anyone requested a picture from you? Has anyone ever asked you to go in a chat room alone? They would all put up their hand in a classroom. And
No, seriously?
these are 12-year-olds. Yep. And if we haven't taught them how to deal with those types of interactions, then the likelihood of exploitation would be much greater. Predators go online looking for kids who are vulnerable. They go online looking for kids who are lonely. COVID-19 has increased the amount of sexual exploitation, child sexual abuse images, because more kids are spending more time online. There's more sharing of inappropriate images. So, education is the only way to keep our kids safe. I think when I hear a parent say, well, I'm just not going to let my kids go online ever, that's really unrealistic, because they go to birthday parties, they go to play dates, they're on it at school, and some of our school filters are not the best either. And I've seen kids tell me that if they were on Google Images, for example, that they can see pretty close to pornographic content, if not like naked people, right? So if it's accessible at school and it's accessible at home and it's accessible to grandparents because they don't filter, kids get a very clear message that even though adults say don't watch this, the kids understand, well, okay, well, you said don't watch it, but I can actually just Google anything and there it is. So they get a mixed message around whether or not the adults really think this is something that they shouldn't be watching, because they're actually allowing them to watch it.
I see
They
what you
give
mean.
them a free pass.
Even on top of that, like I remember when I was younger, a lot of kids like helicopter parents or people that keep their kids sheltered. Like I'm saying this, like when you get older, if you don't have the ability to comprehend certain things or even communicate or understand what sexuality is,
Yeah.
you are at a bigger risk at the age of 25, 26 to be sexually exploited, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing is, youth are doing some very incredible things online. We have some, environmental leaders. We have kids creating all sorts of things through code. I want kids not to be fearful of the internet, but I want them to be informed as to, okay, so if someone did approach you, what do you say? What do you do? How do you report it? Because a lot of kids are afraid to tell their parents if they see inappropriate content, because they're fearful that their parents will take their device. So then kids withhold information instead of telling their parents, and then something that could have been dealt with easily now becomes a catastrophe, because maybe this child's been talking to this adult who's 42 thinking that they're 12 years old, and now they want to meet in public or in private.
I'm so disturbed. And I know we keep talking about the internet. Like I recently heard, actually recently saw an article about internet companies being charged and convicted for child pornography in Canada. Mm-hmm. Is that a good thing, or is that it? Like I don't know what to say. Like now a corporation is responsible and can be charged if you access pornography mm-hmm. on their internet.
Service. I mean, I think it's a good thing. There's probably lots of ramifications that I don't understand about it, but what I think is we have such a low standard right now for what is allowed on the internet. And I know there are some places in Europe that when you get your internet provider, all of the pornography is filtered out.
Really?
You actually, as a family, have to request it to be into your home. And I think, parents are running a mile a minute right now, trying to keep up with everything, not just like, the online learning, and then you've got the pornography and the sexting and the healthy relationships and the bullying that we're doing. Parents are really big disservice because we're expecting them to know how to do everything, to how to filter out everything, when we actually could be advocating for a filtered system to begin with. And then if a family wanted to have pornography access, they would then pay for that and say, yes, we want it, rather than the opposite of parents having to, again, run a mile a minute to figure this out, because many parents are not taking the time to do this because they're working 3 jobs, or they have 6 kids, or, they've got so many other responsibilities. They think, well, we're a good family. My kids don't do those kinds of things. And like, there is no good family where the kids will not explore this. It doesn't matter what religious affiliation you are. Kids are curious beings. They don't get the sexual health that they are supposed to get. And so being curious, they're going to go online.
Fair enough. I like what you said earlier in respects to the fact that it's not just all for one. You have to select what type of actual programming you want. And I think that's such a great thing that we should be adding, because I don't need to see all that. I don't want to see all that. And if my age don't need to see all that, why does a 6-year-old, 7, or even 12-year-old need to see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me speak on that. Is there any benefit of pornography? Like, let's be real. Is there any benefit of pornography out there?
So for people under 18, I think no, like if I'm going to be really honest, but I do understand some of the LGBTQ youth go online because they want to be represented. They want to find themselves, like, how do I share my body if I have a vulva and my partner has a vulva? Like, how do we do that? Or how do gay men have sex, or whatever? But again, they're going to get distorted images, and they'll think that all gay men have sex this way. And it really isn't true. It's different from person to person. So I would say for adults, there is some research to support, if 2 consenting adults watch pornography together, it can be a sexual enhancement for people. But if in a relationship, if one person's watching pornography and they're doing it secretly and the other person doesn't know about it, and then the person is caught, it can cause a lot of issues around trust and, and faithfulness or whatever. I think overall, like, it distorts regular bodies, right? Not everybody has perfectly perky breasts. Not everybody, wants to shave every hair off their body. Not everybody makes ridiculous sounds when they're having sex. Not that people don't make sounds, but like, they
I know what you
take
mean.
it to like a theatrical level. And then I'm sure teenagers are wondering, well, should I be like making those sounds? Or like, rather than it being like intuitive and authentic, have whatever sounds you want, but don't like mimic it after somebody else. So, the benefits I think are far and few between, because prior to pornography, when 2 people shared their bodies, they didn't need a script. They didn't need a how-to manual, right? 2 bodies come together, and with communication and openness, you can figure out what you like and what you don't like just through experiencing each other's bodies. And the problem with pornography is heavily scripted to focus on the mouth, the anus, the penis, the vagina, and not a whole body experience. And for most people, the skin is very sensitive. You don't see consent in pornography. So kids get the idea that perhaps, like, I don't have to ask, that I can coerce someone, that I can force someone, right? So the benefits do not outweigh, for me, the very many concerns I have for people watching pornography in childhood, in the teen years. As an adult, someone will look at pornography and say, you know what? I'm pretty sure my wife won't do that with me. This is a paid actor and actress. I'm not going to ask her. She probably doesn't want to. And I get that this is fantasy land. But we also have people like self-pleasuring to violent, aggressive images, which then makes our brain sort of think that sex is tied with violence. And that's really concerning to me too, because obviously Maybe some people like aggressive sex, great, but that's in a consensual environment. It's not where someone's paid, I'll pay you more to do this sexual act if you do it. And if you don't want to do it, we'll find someone else. Like, that's very coercive in itself.
I get what you're saying, and I think you're right. It depends on what you're doing for and what you're getting out of it. Even when you said like pornography, like under the age of 18, I find for people that aren't self-aware of what their sexual health, like any sexual health education, when they hit as an adult, a lot of young adults do get taken advantage. A lot of them are coerced into doing things that they may not feel comfortable with, because they want to be in a relationship, or they feel like so. I guess for me personally, I don't think there's actually any benefit unless you want, like, if you have a healthy relationship sexually with yourself, maybe. If you don't, I don't think it's something that you should consider watching anytime soon.
If you're also single at the moment, some people may watch pornography for sexual pleasure, but it is all about the consent piece, right? If your partner wants to watch pornography and you don't, and they make you feel guilty, or that you're not super sexual or whatever, then that's not going to be healthy for that relationship either, right? Like, I just think it's like, whatever anyone does in the privacy of their own bedrooms, not my business, but please make sure that it is consensual, that both people are enthusiastic, they can change their mind at any point in time, that the person is it's a mutually beneficial kind of arrangement, not just better for one and not so great for somebody else.
Fair enough. I think a lot of people are watching and listening, and there's not a lot of sex educators out there. So I guess my question to you is, why is this topic very passionate for you? Not pornography itself, but the sex education. Why did you get into it?
Well, I see sexual health education as important, maybe even more important than physical, emotional, mental well-being, right? It's everybody has a birthright to this information. It's something that people are likely to share their bodies with at least one person, if not many more people. And I would want everybody to have all of the information that they need before they have their first sexual experience.
It's fair enough, because if I take myself back as when I was younger, I don't remember being educated on sex. Like, I remember classes, like sexual health classes, like they taught you about the basic organism. But I think other parts about your feelings, what some expectations, what not to, when somebody's doing something, I don't remember having that conversation. I think as I got older, it wasn't taught. It was more, maybe hearing somebody like you talk or hearing other people talk. It's not well received because people don't want to talk about sex, and parents don't want to talk about sex to their kids because they don't see them as sexual beings. I'm not saying that kids are sexual beings, but what I'm saying is that they are being exposed to a lot of sexual content, that you need to make sure that they're ready mentally and as well as physically to understand what they're going to be facing even at the age of 7. It's really bad.
Kids need to be able to know, okay, in my city, where do I go for birth control? Where do I go if I'm in an unhealthy relationship? What happens if I'm pregnant? What are my options? Like, what do I do if my boyfriend or girlfriend says that they're going to kill themselves if I break up with them? Because this is a common thing that I deal with in my high schools,
Really?
the high level of manipulation of because kids are really struggling with their mental health, and they put so much pressure sometimes on the people that they're dating to meet all of their needs. And then when that person doesn't want to be with that person anymore, then they have suicidal ideation or suicidal thoughts, right? So kids need to know, like, what is love? What's it going to feel like when I'm in love? Like, how do I know what I like and what I don't like? Should I be masturbating? Should I not be? Like, there's so many things. Yes, it's important for them to know their private body part names and, their trusted adults and all the puberty information, but they need more information about, like, the emotional aspect of being in a relationship, how to communicate with someone, how to break up with someone respectfully, how to maintain your dignity and boundaries in a relationship. That's what kids need, and it's hard for them to find that online. right? That's why someone like me, I come into a school, this is all I do. I don't teach math. I don't have to do social studies or French or whatever. I only do this, and it's quite difficult for me to even keep up with the amount of different topics that I teach. That's like a part-time job in itself, researching, watching videos, doing online training so that I'm current.
I think people like you have a lot of knowledge. I don't like again, you have to understand. I don't remember having or meeting someone like you at school or even in university or even college. Like even at this age, I think a lot of people still don't have that education. And I think if they wanted to reach out to learn more about your services for even their own personal education or their schools, what's the best platform to reach you out on?
Sure. So my website is www.powerupeducation.com. But because I've moved really a ton online since COVID-19, if you go to Power Up Education Eventbrite, you'll be able to see all of the courses that I'm offering. I'm doing preschool to adult classes, and I'm offering a 4-part series coming up from January to April, 1 workshop a month for youth. We're talking about consent. We're talking about pornography. We're talking about gender and sexual orientation, and we're talking about sexting. So it's meant for a youth to attend with an adult. So the adults are learning too, and the adult becomes the child's sexual health educator, not me, because they only have access to me for a short time. They need people in their life that they can talk about this in the car, at the dinner table, on a walk on the beach. I have some questions, and yet most of the time the parents are not comfortable answering the questions is because they don't know, because they didn't get the sexual health, and they can't be blamed for that. But when you have kids, you take on the role and responsibility of your child's sex ed. That's just a given. And if you don't want that responsibility, then you have to find people like me who will help and guide you and support you. And I'm happy to do that.
I appreciate what you're saying. Like I see parents, like I know people that don't want to have this topic. The parents didn't have this topic. Like my dad did not have this topic. I did not have a sexual education with my dad. And I guess a lot of people are uncomfortable because their parents were uncomfortable. And then there's a lot of religious implications. Like, there's a lot of people that don't have the questions, or they don't, it's a taboo conversation. I think I'm hoping one day, like with the continued exposure and having this conversation like this, the people that are on the fence, make the change and break the cycle of lack of education when it comes to sexual health.
Yeah.
With that said, before I let you go, is there anything you want to add? Because again, it's always a pleasure talking to you. It's kind of sad at times talking to you, but like not in a bad way, but more in an enlightening way. Like it's more ignorance. Like it's just, I'm sorry.
I think one of the things that I learned about pornography that has really stuck with me is this. So when a baby is born and they're put into their parents' arms for the first time, oxytocin flows very freely for both of them, and that's the love and bonding chemical. Unfortunately, when kids and youth watch pornography, the same chemical releases, and they actually will be bonding with the people on the screen. And what that is translating to is youth are having a really hard time, and young adults too, having healthy relationships with a real person. So we have things like erectile challenges in late teen, early 20s for boys, which I really can't even imagine what that would do with your, psychological mind, not being able to have an erection with your girlfriend, but being able to have erection when you watch pornography. Right. So I just want people to understand a lot of stuff is happening in the body when kids are watching pornography. We have the dopamine release, which allows them to want to go back for more. We've got this oxytocin chemical, and so don't be surprised if your kids were watching pornography 2 years prior to you finding out about it, because they're going to be doing it in secrecy. And they don't want you to find out about it, but you will eventually find out about it because they may be acting out, inappropriate behaviors with, people that they should never be with. So just to be very aware that we have to educate ourselves. And my training on pornography talks all about that. It's coming up between, I can't remember the date. It's between January and April. It's on my website and on Eventbrite. But yeah, just educate yourself. don't be naive. Don't be the parent who has the head in the sand, because that is not a useful tool for our kids today. We have to pull our heads out of the sand. We have to look clearly around, and then we have to gather with people who can educate us so that we can keep our kids safer in the world.
100%. And yes, again, very sobering conversation. Really, it is. And it's a good conversation. And thank you for being part of this conversation with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us today on our weekly episode of Health Your Way podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share with others, and please feel free to comment below and ask any questions on topics we discussed, as well as future topics you'd like to hear about. Have a happy and healthy week, and be sure to tune in next week for the next episode on our Health Your Way podcast.